All right, welcome back to another edition of Texans Unfiltered, a Houston football podcast for your Houston Texans. This is day 2 of recording yet again.
We had a practice run. It's all good.
It was a practice run, but typically in the past when we've had to redo this, the second one is never as good as the first one.
No, yeah, I'm a little bit afraid about that because we can't capture what we were saying last time, or we're going to try to, which kind of ruins it.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah, you wonder if it's like organic or not because it's like we already did this once.
Mm-hmm.
But welcome back to the original Houston Texans podcast.
Yeah, we've just been on a little bit of a break. It's all good.
A life break.
Yeah, we had some things happen. So it's all good.
Yeah, I think for me, I just got busy and life and different things and different endeavors and really started to find passions in other things. And I think that kind of took me away. I think with doing this for so long, this would be year 8 now if we would not have stopped. We had 7 years of potting before. Now we're back at it. We're going to do this once a week, and we're going to try to give you guys 2 episodes. We're going to try to give you a recap and then a preview. It may not work like that. It might end up being 1 episode just released the same day. We'll all determined by time and what we can take on. But this is a back thing. Like, we are back. We are going to record weekly. We are going to find ways. We are hoping to only be in person. Schedules can be conflicting. We may end up having to do some remote if necessary. But yeah, I'm back. John's back. John had a lot going on at that time. I think we all did. COVID happened, and then just outside of COVID, other things happened. I mean, I don't know what you want to share or what you went through, but
yeah, it's like I lost a child during the pregnancy, and then afterwards got a divorce. Those things tend to go hand in hand, unfortunately, just when you go through something traumatic, which, made it hard to want a pod. And then at the same time, everything around the Texans was just so incredibly toxic. It made it not an escape. Like, it almost felt like we did this almost nonstop for 5 years. I don't think we missed a single week in 5 years. Over those 5 years, either me or James every single week. And for the vast majority, both of us were here. And then just with everything going on, recovering from COVID, I do still have 2 young boys. Now I'm a single dad to 2 young boys. It was just a lot, and it wasn't fun. But now things are starting to get fun, and it's not about the winning. It's also things settling down within my life where I can kind of get back to doing things that I enjoy. Like, I honestly just missed talking with James and hanging out with James and just doing this every week, and all the other guys in the community that we built around Texans Unfiltered. Like, I miss that. And the feeling with the team itself is a lot more positive, which is a huge plus when it comes to it. Like, it's exciting to not have to talk about toxic shit. And I'm not just talking about like the winning and the losing. I'm talking about all the other drama that was around it. It was just too much.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a lot. I mean, especially when you look at like creating content every week. I mean, we always try to be optimistic and positive with our approach and try to take it from, like, we always try to have a different approach than everybody else. We would look at it from any perspective we could and try to just give you our thoughts and opinions. But once negativity continues, and then I think, like, at least for me, I think I got too involved in wondering, like, am I going to be I have these interviews and relationships. Am I going to be an insider? Am I gonna go back and forth on Twitter? Do I want to be, an Aaron Wilson? And do I want, like, I literally had no idea. It was like conflicting for me mentally because I didn't know what was best at that time. And like, I had a great job and I had things going, but it was just like a lot. And then on top of that, just life. And I think now we're at a point to where we can do this regularly. And you're right, like, talking to John on a weekly basis, like, it was an escape for me as well. I knew I had an hour dedicated to talking with my boy while also talking about something we loved. And like, it's hard when you're a dad and a husband and an entrepreneur and, like, an employee and like all these other things that you try to be. It's really hard sometimes to just find an hour.
Yeah. Well, it was more than an hour because we'd sit there and we'd try to break down.
Too.
Yeah, we'd talk for a while, but like doing the prep work. reading all the articles, going through a bunch of the bullshit that was on Twitter, going through and watching the game film. Like I do not have time to sit there and break down every game.
Yeah.
I do not have time to sit there and rewatch every single minute on the all 20 on the all 22. I can't even remember what it's called. It's been so long since I looked at it. Now, don't get me wrong, like I love it. Like I'm going to get back into legitimately watching the games and paying attention to the games in a way that I hadn't in a while. But honestly, our goal with this is to get back to us just having fun with it.
Yeah.
We're putting in so much time and effort and spending like our own money in ways that you really don't get until you try to put on a really good podcast. And we weren't chasing money. We weren't trying to make money. So it was a net loss from that perspective. But the best parts of it were the relationships that we built, the relationships with y'all listeners, like the community we built, and then the relationship between me and James, like just sitting down and just having this chance to just talk about what we love. And most of the time was about football, but lots of times we'd talk about other things too. And that was fun. And that was great. And that was the best part of it. Like doing the breakdowns and trying to argue with people, like what is the right coverage, blah, blah, blah. Like that's just tiresome. And I know it's interesting for a lot of people, but there's better people out there that can do it. Go follow them. For us, come have fun with us. Come talk and chill and, just live the emotional ride of being a Texans football fan.
Well, and I think from a business perspective, like the net loss and like the investment and stuff like that, it was our own fault why we didn't make money. Like it was not anybody else's fault. We just didn't prioritize it. And I think we were trying to find the balance of like, we don't want it to be about money, because there were so many other content creators out there and podcasts and YouTubers where it was like, that was truly the focal point. For us, it was like, no, we have good jobs. We have a good life. Like things are working. We don't really need it to be that. We need it to be a passion project that continues to like just give us an escape and the ability to talk about our team. But now I think with how we see things, and, it happens as you evolve as an individual. We want to deliver the highest quality podcast that we can, highest quality YouTube that we can. So whether that's, from a video perspective, from an audio perspective, from a content perspective, those are things that John and I always want to do. But I think now we really have that ability. And I listen to a ton of podcasts still. I don't listen to Texans podcasts because I don't really know how to say it, but it's really hard for me during the week to find the time I used to find to put towards Texan stuff, in the sense of like, I could be listening to like a business podcast or a branding podcast or something that's going to give back to me mentally and let me kind of grow internally and as a person. But I know like there's still some good ones out there that still do obviously a great job. We won't be as I won't be, actually, I can't say we, I won't be as confrontational as I was before. I
For
don't
the
really
time
care.
being. For the time.
I mean, we'll take shots because that's who I am. But like, I'm not going to come out and just start to try to take the throne or anything like that. I probably won't even argue on Twitter anymore. Like, I literally just want to come here, record, if we have some community conversations on Twitter, great. But like John said, I'm not breaking down all 22 film. I'm not going to do any more threads on Twitter. We're just here to talk about the game, talk about the team, give you guys updates on what we're doing. There are other things that we'll be able to do as we continue. Like with Inland Grove, we'll be able to have updated and really cool merch now because we have the resources to do that. So like I'm working on a CJ Stroud golf polo right now. There's some things that we'll be able to do, but I think now it's really just focused on just having a good time. Like it really is how it started, and get back to it. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, I mean, I know we wanted to keep it pure. Like our enthusiasm and all for the team was always legit. We weren't out-of-towners that are pretending to like the Texans just for a paycheck. I think that's pretty obvious. That's never who we've been.
Well, I mean,
ride or die. We are Texans fans.
100%.
We met through the Texans subreddit.
I was going to say, like, I think for those that maybe either might be joining us now or seeing us for the first time, like I literally put out a thread on or a post on Reddit, like, hey, anybody interested in doing a Texas podcast? Went through a bunch of interviews. All of them sucked. And then randomly, like 3 weeks later, John hit me up and was like, hey, yo, whatever happened to this? I was like, I didn't really ever find anybody. He's like, I'm in Austin. I was like, what? I was like, me too, dude. Like, he's like, let's meet and have a drink. I think we went to Jack and Jill's and had a beer. And then from then on, it was it. And now, 7-8 years later, we're friends. Our kids know each other. And then we're also like doing this. It's just interesting.
Yeah, we haven't really, we never had a lot of conflict between the two of us. Like
No.
we never stopped recording because we just didn't like each other or something like that. It was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why we're back. And, we're going to try and be a little bit more upfront about, yes, we would like to make money so we can afford to do this. But we're not trying to make a living out of it. But we will be pushing things like a membership. We will be probably pushing like a newsletter and things like that. And honestly, it's just to support this and order to really just turn around and put it back into the podcast.
Well, I think the truth is we are in the content creator era right now.
Yeah.
We'd be stupid to not try to find a way to maximize this and have it be, whether it be a passive income or who knows, if it ends up becoming like this great, amazing podcast, like awesome. I mean, it is going to be a great, amazing podcast, but if it ends up being like this, like growth thing that continues, then awesome. But I think for us, we're not going to turn a blind eye to it anymore. We're just going to embrace the entire process and everything that comes with it. We will do sponsors. We will do ads. I remember a thing for us was like, we're not doing ads. We're not going to do ads. Ads were not a thing. That's gone. Like we're going to do ads because every podcast you listen to, there's ads. That's just the way it is. But yeah, so I think it's kind of enough of an update for us and where we're at. I would say now let's take a step back to like what got us to the 2024 season and how we were able to get to the point to where, AFC championship or bust seems to be like the mantra or the way that fans are viewing these things, which is fine and great. I'm all for it.
It's nice.
I'm all for that. With like the fact that we can have that conversation, that can be something is great, but you always have to revisit what you did to get there.
Well, I mean, you got to remember, we left y'all at kind of the lowest low. Like last time we talked, this is the lowest low. So
no, it was Coley. It was like the Coley and Lovie Smith era.
Yeah, we were here for
the lowest low would be like one Deshaun and Easterby. That was the lowest. I don't think we left in the lowest of lows.
No, it's pretty low.
It was pretty low. It was.
So, but I mean, we were sitting here, we were talking, our last podcast, we were talking about the dysfunction. Yeah. We were talking about when James was still trying to do this solo and he had me back on. Yeah. How I had even lost faith in Nick Caserio. I'm like, I don't want him to hire another coach. And that was just because
it wasn't just the coaching though.
I mean, it wasn't
the 2-year deals,
but the Cullies, the Lovie Smith, like it didn't. It felt like we were just treading water, which I mean, we honestly were.
Yep.
But he did have a plan at the time. It just didn't feel like he had a plan. So I'm trying to lay the framework from where we were. Like to me, we're pretty low. We didn't know where the team was going. There didn't seem like there was a lot of hope.
Yep. No faith really in Nick Caserio from a fan base perspective either. It wasn't just John.
No.
It was a lot of people. A lot of people did not believe Nick Caserio was going to be this phenomenal general manager that he is now. Not being executive of the year last year to me is insane. That's another conversation for another day. But you're right. I mean, this really was a low when we left. Now, fast forward, that's not the case. So like if we go back from when we left, entering the 2023 offseason, I think the first thing we need to revisit is the fact that without Nick Caserio, none of this is possible. You couldn't insert another general manager into this position at the time that he came in and got to where we're at now. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that he put his balls on the table and said, I'm not trading Deshaun Watson at the All-Star break, at the trade. We did this yesterday, so this is an organic trade deadline. And Miami was offering two ones and I think like a third or fourth or some like later round pick. Nick said no. I'm gonna wait until he either gets acquitted or settles, and I'm going to get maximum return for Deshaun Watson, which at the time is probably the most pivotal point of this franchise, because gaining that many assets to rebuild is critical for you to be able to get to where they're at now in entering 2024. So him doing that, gutting the Browns, that put us on the path that we're on now. Then the way he spent the assets and the way he drafted and all of the 2-year, 1-year deals that everybody killed him for all led us to this point that we were able to have the cap space that we needed. We were able to make the trades needed, and then we were also able to do the things that we did in the draft last year, which is adding CJ Stroud, adding Will Anderson, adding Tank Dell. Obviously, the years prior was Stingley and Kenyon Green. There's so many other things that have happened. But because of that, we enter the 2024 season thinking anything's possible.
Yeah, and I mean, step back at the beginning. You said Caserio played the Watson thing correctly, and he did. Looking back on it now, essentially suspending him for an entire season, not playing him at all, holding on to him, making sure that he didn't panic. And then Caserio even was given a little bit of a hard time with not receiving a player in the Deshaun Watson draft, or just draft picks, like that. There maybe was not enough compensation at the time,
which is crazy.
Which has actually turned out that he got a maximum value. He made sure that Watson went to a team that he wanted to go to that overpaid him once they got him.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
To think about, he didn't have to do that.
He didn't. But it was one of those to make sure that it all went smoothly, that once the trade was done, it went through. We had the assets. There was no way for Cleveland to turn around and demand the assets or say anything was conditional or anything like that. Once it was done, it was done.
Yep.
And essentially washed this franchise's hands of this problem.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, we're talking about all this with the trade with the Deshaun Watson trade. Don't forget, everybody was also referring to ownership as Tommy Boy.
Oh yeah, no, there was no faith at all.
There was zero faith in Cal.
Cal was known as Tommy Boy is a local reference, and I think even outside perspectives, I don't think they knew about the subreddit name of Tommy Boy, but he was viewed locally and started to become known nationally as like a guy who should not be running the franchise.
Like the national story about Cal at the time was that he would play video games all day, and GMs would walk in and he was playing video games, and players would walk in and he's playing Call of Duty. And this is who our ownership was supposed to be.
Yep. Thank God for Hannah.
And thank God for Hannah. But we've gone from this where you get a little bit of Caserio. Did he play this correctly? And we have our owner that seems so disconnected that even Hannah was looked at as almost like a gold digger, because I mean, honestly, look at the two of them. Like, so you just have all this you have this negativity around that. And then within 18 months, like, of course, we go through Lovie Smith, we go through David Culley. Lovie Smith probably should have had the job for 2 years, and the Culley experiment should not have happened. But other than that,
Culley should have had it for 2 years.
No. Lovie should have started as the head coach.
So we should have hired.
We should have just gone. Culley. We should have just gone with Lovie from the beginning.
I mean, at that point, whether Culley was year one or whoever was hired first should have just been 2 years.
Right. Well,
we should have dealt with Culley. If it was Culley for a second year, God, that would have been horrible. Who knows what would have turned out? I think Lovie going for the 2-point conversion and all that. I don't know if Culley would have done that. I think he was very much an employee in the sense of like he wasn't going to do what upper management didn't want him to do. I think Lovie probably was more I'm at the point where I don't really care. But you're right. Like we probably should have had that. But then
but I'm also talking about that from just a PR perspective.
Oh, for sure.
Because how it worked out in the win-loss, like it worked out. Like everything worked out. Like the players, the young guys that we had then have surprisingly developed through all that chaos and all the coaching changes. Like we actually developed players out of that, and the win-loss worked out exactly where it needed to for us to get the players that we now have. So going back and trying to Monday morning quarterback that whole situation when it's like, they actually played it right.
Yeah.
Maybe not
though.
And maybe not from the
I was the only one though.
Yeah, you were. Maybe not from the PR standpoint, but they didn't cave under the PR.
No.
And we've changed our minds from Cal being this out of touch Tommy Boy type owner
to like one of the coolest owners.
To him and to Cal and Hannah combined
they're a power dude.
They are the power couple owner. Like they are so in tune with what the fans want.
They are Jay-Z and Beyonce.
They really are
the NFL owners, bro. They truly are.
I mean,
Hove and Beyonce. They are like when you think about it, like genuinely, like they won over an entire city after the city literally said no.
Yeah,
we're done. We're not doing anything.
Like you have that memorable picture of Hannah pretty much
falling asleep
at the Browns game, like just absolutely disgusted. to now them rocking out with like the new uniforms and just
taking shots
and
at
taking
the Browns.
shots.
Took a shot at the Browns last week.
Yeah, and just being
Just
out
different.
there and the Red Gala kickoff season event, just the vibes around it.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
honestly, like who would have thought if I had said two years ago, would you trade Jerry Jones for Cal McNair?
Everybody would have probably said, yeah.
Well, really? You think so?
2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, everybody would have said, yeah.
3 years ago.
Everybody would say, yeah.
You think so?
I think, yeah. I honestly, because it was just a known commodity.
Right.
Cal was an unknown commodity, right?
You would still rather have.
You need to know what you have coming.
You would rather have Cal.
I would not have.
Over
I was the only person who always said, and you'll remember this, I always said, you guys are expecting a guy who was thrusted into a position he did not know he needed to be ready for when his dad passed.
Right.
I have always said, we don't know what we have with Cal. We need to give it time to let him fall into the role and grow and develop. But we never gave him that time, and we were never patient enough to do it. We never gave him the grace. Now, fast forward, and we're seeing that like he literally is what at the top and the epitome of what we want an owner to be. He's there doing everything from throwing up the H to wearing, whatever. But nobody knew that was going to be the case.
Yeah, like not forcing trades.
But you have to understand for anybody, and it's relatable to a career in the sense of like when you are thrust into or when you are hired for a new position, there is a like a ramp up period where you have to get acclimated to that new role to be able to spread your wings and do the things you need to do. Sure, he spent time with his dad, but nobody expected his dad to die at the time he did, and really he had to just hop in. And so I think it's at this point it's okay now, right? Like we're all good.
Yeah.
It's just insane to think like nobody knew.
It's crazy to think 3 years ago, everybody thought Dallas had the best ownership, and Houston had the worst ownership, and now you switch it, and honestly, like
so far so good.
So far so good.
Keep it easy.
I mean,
let's be fine.
In 3 years,
Dallas championships.
Yeah, but
let's give it time. Is all I'm saying.
I'm just saying it's been 30 years or so.
I know. But let's just give it some time. And it can easily go the other way. It can. Let's not ignore that it can't. It happens. We don't expect it to.
I'm just saying, just look at the situation compared to where it was.
Yeah, no, it's 10x different.
And if you had said 3 years ago when Cal's older brother was trying to do the hostile takeover, I bet you half the city would have been rooting for the older brother.
Oh, they were.
And now,
not no more.
I mean, this past 6 months, people were sitting there like Janice, like
I saw a guy get a Cal tattoo.
It's absolutely insane what has happened in the past 3 years.
Well, and the other part we missed is the hiring of DeMeco Ryans, right? So we talked about the draft and CJ Stroud and the additional players that were added, but now we're talking about the reinvigoration of the culture of the Houston Texans ultimately starts with DeMeco Ryans, right? DeMeco Ryans being hired and coming back home and being held to the standard that DeMeco Ryans has built in his reputation, that aspect really kind of kicked everything into gear. That without that hire, we're not able to even be having to have this conversation right now. DeMeco changed the landscape of it all. And that's coming from somebody who wanted Steichen. I wasn't fully bought in on DeMeco. I did think from a cultural perspective, it was always going to be great. But I just always thought, so I was wrong so far, year in. We're going to have to give it time. But year in, DeMeco changed everything. He changed the landscape of the organization. And now, fast forward, 2024, this is where we're at.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's whomever hired DeMeco Ryans, group effort, however they made it.
Why do we do that? Why can't we just say, why do we have to put it out there that Nick had no say in it? Why do people do that? I don't understand it.
I'm just, will you let me finish my point before you?
Yeah, but I saw where you were going.
No, you actually didn't.
The words you chose were whoever. Why can't it just be a group conversation like the whole group did?
No, because I do believe it was a group thing.
There we go.
Because here's the deal. I don't think DeMeco Ryans comes back to Houston if it was really as dysfunctional as it was being let out to be.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever really as dysfunctional as people thought it was. I think there were moments of it. But
I think there was definitely moments of it. I mean, you look back.
People thought.
You look back and you read after Deshaun Watson and everything came out about him, they definitely cleaned house throughout the training staff all the way up to Easterby. All gone.
Easterby was a year later, though.
He was a year later, but he was gone too.
He was gone.
And I do think that if Easterby was still there, then D'Amico Ryans doesn't get hired. I think that there was an actual concerted effort to clean house.
But let's also give Easterby props. Because without Easterby, we don't know if Nick would be here.
We do not know.
And unfortunately, which sounds weird. I know giving Easterby props is probably like, don't ever say that. But he was the guy that turned around from, who was it? What was his name that the Steelers ended up hiring? That was the guy. That was the guy. It was reported he was not Elliot Wolf. What was his name? Either way, that guy was going to be hired by Cal. And it was the one that the consulting board said, this is who to hire. The report is Easterby turned the plane around and said, no, we need to go talk to Nick. Remember?
Mm-hmm. And then he also got us in trouble for it.
And then he got us in trouble for it. But either way, we ended up getting the guy that we wanted.
And no, I mean, Caserio even, it was Omar Khan.
There it is, Omar Khan.
Omar Khan. And I mean, I was a huge fan of the Caserio hire at the time. I still believe
everybody else was scared though.
Yes.
Patriots South.
I thought that Caserio should have been the GM when we had Bill O'Brien, because then a lot of things would not have happened the way they did.
I think we'd be. I mean, I know we're not supposed to do this, but I think we'd have a Super Bowl.
Quite possibly.
I think Bill and Nick would have been. I don't think we would have seen the bad side of Bill that we saw.
No, I agree, I think there would have been some cultural issues that would have been dealt with better
100%.
if Bill O'Brien wasn't trying to do all the jobs all the time, because he was offensive coordinator to GM.
And he didn't want to be GM.
Right.
People forget about that.
But he was doing it all.
Yeah.
And part of the reason was apparently no one else could work with him. But I think him and Caserio seems like he knows how to draw those lines.
They would have figured it out.
And they would have figured it out.
Yeah, I agree. Real quick, Bill O'Brien or Gary Kubiak? Better coach?
Better legacy is Kubiak.
You think Kubiak's a better legacy?
Look at the Shanahan offense and everything that has sprouted.
No, I mean for Texans. I don't mean legacy-wise. I mean as a Texans head coach. I'm not worried about what they have done or where their offense has evolved to in other teams. I mean
just
as a Texans head coach.
Well, I'm saying that even just Texans, because that legacy is why D'Amico Ryans is such a good coach, why Slovak is such a good offensive coordinator.
I think Bill O'Brien was a better head coach for the Houston Texans. And you just by division titles alone, you can make that argument.
No, I mean it's not.
But he also didn't have Peyton Manning in his division.
It is a great argument and a great discussion to really think about. That if you put me on the spot, I don't really have an answer.
Yeah.
Because you look at the talent level. There was at times that Bill O'Brien got more out of his talent than he really should have.
Oh my God, there were lots of times that he did that.
But then at the same time,
he came on the podcast.
Yeah, he did come on the podcast. He got more out of your talent too. But
yeah.
But at the same time, there's also a couple of teams that Bill O'Brien coached that maybe they did underperform.
Yeah.
But that was probably because he was doing every single job from offensive coordinator on up.
It's just interesting. Maybe that's the conversation for like a Patreon once we get to that point or something like that.
Yeah. Whereas Kubiak, I mean, he put together some really good teams.
He did. He also, diminished the value of Andre Johnson and some other things that, I would have liked to have seen a little different. But like I said, another conversation, I think probably for another pod, but
there you go.
The Andre Johnson
should
be studied.
You're teasing a Patreon.
Well, I mean, get there.
We don't even have one. We don't even have one, but I mean, that would be a great standalone discussion. Better Bill O'Brien or Gary Kubiak?
100%.
Okay.
Right. Which would you? And then there's another conversation to be had. Would you rather have the 4 years of Deshaun or the 5 or 6 years of Matt Schaub? Anyways, there's lots of places we can go with this, but and it's because I actually subscribed to my first Patreon. I've never subscribed to a Patreon before for a podcast, but I did it for the Joe Budden podcast, and it's interesting because they're amazing at what they do. So, okay, week 1, we have the Colts versus the Texans. For those that have listened for a long time, I do have a particular liking of a 6'5", 255.
You have a
pound
straight up
quarterback.
man crush on him.
I mean, the dude is
Like Jackie should be nervous if he ever walked in the same room.
He should. He's like Thor playing quarterback, right? Like, dude is like chiseled, his arm, his speed, but then his story is awesome. It's just hard not to like him.
Yeah, and then you watch his interviews on the Colts, and you're like, God damn it, he's
like likable and funny.
He's likable, like
yeah. So I have a bias. We just need to get that out there now. But obviously, CJ is my guy. It just kind of is what it is. So Colts Texans this week.
Well, here's a question for you. Who do you think is going to end up having the better career?
That's not a fair question. I mean, if we go just off of data, CJ Stroud's going to have a better career, right?
CJ,
One year alone tells me that. I mean, from a statistic, he's already ahead because he played a full season, right? So, I think he missed 2 games, right, or 1 game. Also interesting that we extended Davis Mills today.
Did we really?
Yeah,
I missed that.
Yeah. Most people. It's funny. I already saw people who were bashing Mills during the Mills era say, "What? Getting Davis Mills for $5 million a year? That's insane.
No.
We're so lucky. He should make more money." No shit. He should, but it's only 1 year. They only extended 1 year, so 2025.
Okay, that's almost kind of like a thank you contract.
Yeah. And I'm surprised he accepted it because he probably. I mean, what? I think Mitch Trubisky gets like $8 million a year or something as a backup. Yeah. Mills should be probably the higher or highest paid backup in the league, based on what we've seen him be capable of in certain situations. But anyways, I just thought it was interesting. So I think CJ will have a better career than Anthony Richardson. I do believe that.
I mean, from a longevity standpoint, like the type of player that CJ Stroud is, like he should.
Yeah.
All things going as they should, but it's football. Things can always happen.
100%. And
do you think that from like an individual season, though, like from one season, you can get both of their best season
health? Oh, both.
One season. You got to choose, and we're gonna kind of trying to predict like which one's ceiling is for their best possible season for one season. Who would you have?
Unfortunately, that would be Anthony Richardson because of the rushing. If you're adding that, if we're talking about best season, he's gonna have that where CJ doesn't have that,
right?
And that's gonna be a really hard thing. But then again, like if we take CJ into account and his team and what he did last year, and now we look at like his wide receivers and everything around him. That passing the passing yards and the passing accomplishments he could potentially have might trump even the rushing of Anthony Richardson. You know, I mean, I don't want to say that we have the potential to be the greatest show on turf because I think that that's probably unrealistic. But in a league where the passing offense is king, I think the Texans are positioned to be one of the higher octane offenses that we've probably seen in some time. And that could potentially offset Anthony Richardson rushing. I mean, CJ is just a better overall quarterback in the sense of like throwing the ball, right? His ball placement, his predictions, his understanding of where the wide receiver and tight end is going to be. He does things at an elite level that we probably shouldn't see a rookie do, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about that when obviously we had Deshaun. Deshaun made a couple throws his rookie year where you were just like, how did he place it on the outside shoulder fade in New England?
The difference between CJ Stroud and Deshaun Watson in their passing style is CJ understands where people are going to be.
Correct.
In a way that you rarely see.
He's a football junkie.
Yeah, like
Deshaun relies.
He reads the defense. He reads his offense. He knows where his players are going to be. He always has the ball out before the receivers even out of their break. Like, it's absolutely insane. Whereas Deshaun played quarterback like a shooting guard plays basketball. When he got hot, he could make that three from anywhere.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really reading the defense so much as he was reading the court.
I.e. nickel blitz.
Yeah, like he
never saw that coming. Still to this day, nickel blitz.
I mean, he was one of those where, I mean, when he was on fire, he was just shooting threes.
Yeah.
And it could be very, very effective. Whereas CJ Stroud just has an understanding of the game that is unreal, that is almost like he has a sixth sense out there. And which is crazy because it's something I wanted to bring up again that we talked about yesterday. Was part of the reason we were even able to get CJ Stroud was the S2. Is that what it was called?
Yeah, S2.
The S2 test, where you talked about you took it.
Yeah, I got to take it. I reached out to the S2 guys during all that. There was so much talk about it. I just wanted to see, like, would it be possible? They were actually totally open to it. So I went down to, I think, Lockhart. They had a training facility, and that was an S2 testing facility as well. And so I went and took the test. I scored higher than Will Levis, which,
you mean
I don't know
Mayo himself?
I don't know if that means I should potentially let teams know I'm available, but so it's an interesting test. I don't believe it should have gotten all of the backlash it did get at the time. I think it was very early. It's something that has been done, but not to the level it was done last year. There are aspects of the S2 test that make a lot of sense and really can give you an understanding on kind of where a person is, specifically a quarterback. Like, for example, one of the tests was you're looking at a baseball field or diamond, right? Is that diamond? And a pitch would come from the pitcher's mound. It would hit the ball, or a bat would swing and it would hit it, and you'd see where it hit it, and it would like go for like a millimeter, and then it would disappear. And you had to project where you thought that ball was going to land or end up, right? What area? And I can see that CJ probably did that extremely well. As he sees wide receivers break, and he's just able to read things. To your point, the difference between Deshaun and CJ to me was the fact that Deshaun relied on his athleticism. CJ relies on his brain and his understanding and love for the game. He has a high football IQ, I think, compared to Deshaun, which is fair in my opinion based on what we've seen from Deshaun. Deshaun will make the same mistakes multiple times. Rookie year, CJ, we saw him started to do different things. So it's really interesting because, I mean, when you talk about the rookie season CJ had, you probably couldn't have had a better rookie
His
season.
interception rate was elite level as a rookie, elite level.
That's
period.
Yeah.
Where some of the podcasts and things like that, apparently, did you know that it's a Jordan Love versus CJ Stroud argument going on right now?
That makes sense. Both also sounded dated.
But to me, I didn't until recently, until I started listening to everybody else again over who is going to be the next. Because, with a lot of these podcasts, it can't be both of them are going to be great. It has to be
have a talking point, right?
Yeah, you have to have.
You have to have the hot
And take. With CJ Stroud, the argument is currently he had a touchdown to interception rate that was on par for like Tom Brady seasons, for Aaron Rodgers seasons.
Interesting.
Whereas if he continues that, then yeah, he's going to be an upper tier quarterback. However, most people still aren't completely bought in that it's possible to have a number that good.
Makes sense. I mean, look, for what a rookie did, it's really hard to expect and project where that rookie is going to be. We've seen rookies have good years, and we've seen them have terrible careers. We've seen rookie quarterbacks have awful years and have great careers. It's a small sample size. I think you have to look at CJ and break down what he did to have a better understanding on what he will be. And I think that's one of those stats where it's like, that's not something you see a rookie do, right?
It's not something you see anyone do.
He was also saved at certain points. Like I also saw another stat where like he should have thrown more interceptions.
Yes.
So
this actually goes back to Nico Collins, whom honestly, last podcast we did together, I was not as sold on Nico, and I was way wrong on Nico. Nico had the highest passer rating when targeted by any receiver in football.
I was right about Nico.
So all y'all that I was like, are we sure about Nico? Yeah. He plays a little slow. Yeah, I was wrong.
Yeah, it's those big
admittedly. Because apparently Nico is great, and him and CJ together, that's part of the reason why his interception rate was so low.
Yeah. I think Nico's one. I know some people think otherwise, but I believe Nico Collins is wide receiver one.
He is the prototypical X.
100%.
You saw him you get him unlocked last year with Slovak, how they were using him.
Perfect.
He can block, he can run, he can catch.
Yep.
Like, it's just absolutely obscene how good of a season he had last year.
100%. And I think it can be better, which is the crazy part.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, whereas we have this great problem because Tank Dell's only negative is he is the smallest player in the NFL.
Yeah.
That is it.
I don't see it as a negative.
I mean, well, I don't want him blocking. We talked about this yesterday.
You got to block. You just can't
he's got to block, and I know he has to block. On the goal line. And he's got to block because he's on the field, and this offense does not work without receivers not blocking.
Correct.
But he is too electric of a player.
Yeah.
And you know he's tough. Like, how are you the smallest guy in the NFL and have a nickname and your name be Tank?
Yeah.
Like,
that's fair.
That shows how tough he is.
Agreed.
And it's nothing coming from his camp or anything like that. I personally don't want him blocking because I like the connection that him and CJ Stroud have.
I agree.
There was times where it seemed like CJ would just throw it up and Tank was just there.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. I mean, I think, look, Tank is Tank. We saw what the offense looks like without Tank.
Mm-hmm.
So we know his impact on the offense. I do think that's one of the reasons why Stephon was brought in.
Yeah.
Was because of that. I also think that's another reason why we kept Mechie and didn't trade him was we're going to need potentially another guy because Tank might and will likely get hurt based on size. But I mean, what Tank can do, it's like trying to replace Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
You can't do it, right? You can only hope that Xavier Worthy can catch 3 or 4 over the top during the season, unlike what you saw from Tyreek.
When Nico and Tank were both healthy, I think it wasn't every game. There was a couple of games where I guess Nico wasn't healthy. I think
Nico missed 1 or 2 games.
I may be misremembering it. But when both Tank and Nico were on the field, the Texans had an elite offense. We were talking about
100%.
CJ Stroud just dominating all passing categories. Now, once Tank got hurt, we came back and he went from being elite to above average. Good enough to, beat the Colts barely.
Yeah.
But they did. And then crushed this number 1 ranked Browns defense, which was great.
About as good
but then, the Ravens game happened.
Yeah. Which is fine.
But that's just saying that was without Tank. Now, if you put Tank on the field,
it's different.
At least it's a lot more competitive with the Ravens.
100%. I think that's the most interesting aspect of this roster, the way it's constructed, is the 7 wide receivers, obviously. And you have a lot of wide receivers that can do the same thing, right? So when you look at the wide receivers and you think of Diggs, Mechie, Tank, they can be very similar, right? And the way that they play as a wide receiver. But that also shows you how important those characteristics that those 3 bring to this offense, right? You need Nico, but you also need guys that can get yak. You need yak guys. And all 3 are pretty much yak guys. Mechie was a yak guy in Alabama. Diggs has been a yak guy almost his entire career while also being a great route runner. And Tank is obviously a yak guy. So it's interesting. So, as we go into week 1 playing, versus the Colts.
I was trying to stay on track and actually talk about the game. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get back to that real quick. I guess questions.
Same old. We're never gonna be that.
That's why we don't have an agenda, technically, right? Like we don't ever.
We've tried.
We don't script anything.
Yeah, we ramble.
We have an idea, and that's it.
You give 2 guys with ADHD and microphone.
Yeah, no, it's done.
And we have to talk about what we love. Like we're just info dumping.
I take my Ritalin before we record now because I need to ensure that I stay on task. And it looks like I'll need to do your role more moving forward, which is great.
Yeah, I've been on medicated
for
2 weeks because everything's out.
Yeah. Being unmedicated is not a terrible thing.
It is what it is.
Yeah. So Colts Texans week 1. Questions around the Texans, I think, going into this, first week of the season, I would probably say is run game and offensive line would probably be, I think 1 would be run game, 2 offensive line, and then maybe 3 would be secondary in general, safety, cornerback questions. How do you see the run game looking? I think it's going to take some time.
I'm a little bit more optimistic about our run game. We're not going to be as bad as we were last year. And that's, I guess that is optimism. One of the things with Slovic that I kind of respected.
Slowick.
I
don't know why you had a V every time.
I I make up names. I
fine.
make them up. I
That's
always
fine.
have. I always will.
Poor Bobby.
It is what it is.
Poor Bobby.
I'm gonna call him PFF Bobby because I can actually remember that.
That's fair.
But with Bobby, one of the things that I did respect is it didn't matter if the run game was working or not. We would still commit to doing the play action.
Yep.
And
it works.
That's all we really need our running backs to do at this point. However, I think that Mixon will be better than Singletary. And I say this as Singletary last year was probably my favorite running back that we had on roster to watch since Arian Foster.
That's fair. By the way, he's not saying that he was Arian Foster.
No.
Just favorite since.
Favorite since.
Just in case you guys clip this up.
I don't think, I mean, we all tried to defend Lamar Miller. He was our boy. We've always been.
He had moments.
Yeah, we've always been the podcast that sits there and we try to defend some of our players. We try to get excited about them.
He didn't meet expectations,
but he did not. And we all. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. It's too easy to go. But Singletary last year, favorite since Arian Foster. Yeah. I think the situation that he was in, we got the most out of him. But Mixon is definitely a step up, even if Mixon is on the downside of his career. Mixon is an excellent pass catcher. He knows how to run the outside zone scheme. He's going to work.
Yep.
The interesting question behind it is Cam Akers and Dameon Pierce. And we all want Pierce to be good. We want Pierce to be good. There was times during Pierce's rookie season where he was the only reason you watched Texans football.
He was literally the only reason.
What was that?
I watched it for Mills.
That Thursday night game where he just took over.
No, he re-wrecked it.
And
even last year, he had the return. There were moments, but just not as a running back.
Yeah, we want that. And it's not physical with him. He does not know how to read the offensive line. And I think that has also affected his confidence. 100%. I don't think we could even go back to him just having scripted power plays just for him, because I think he's too in his own head at this point.
He lacks vision.
So I hope that he can figure it out. If it clicks for him and he can start just, getting it with the zone, then yeah, we're in a great spot. If he can't, Cam Akers, unbelievable as it may sound, the bounce back from 2 Achilles injuries has looked phenomenal.
He's looked great during the preseason.
And you've got to remember, talking about Arian Foster ran a 4.7. He was not very fast.
No.
But he knew how to read every block and every crease.
Yep.
And Cam Akers has a little bit of that to him.
No, he does.
He knows where to go. And so I think between the three of them, we will get more consistent production than we did last year.
I agree. I think eventually we will. I do think it's going to take some time. I wouldn't expect to see the run game at full scale until probably week 6 or week 7. I just think there's lots of things that need to be worked on. I think the offensive line is going to be another reason why that doesn't happen. I would say going into this game, that would probably be like I said, that would be the biggest question we have. Is there a run game? And then obviously the offensive line. Kenyon Green had a good camp, first real offseason that he had to get acclimated, not fighting an injury. Can he be the guard that we expect him to be? Every other question, I think, is kind of answered in the sense of what we know the offensive line can be. The other side is the defense.
It's really Green that's the question.
Yeah,
Juice.
Center too.
Juice looked pretty good.
He did, but I'm saying we've seen centers look good rookie year, and then you've seen him look good. You don't.
That is true.
You just don't know. You're also only as good as the guy next to you sometimes.
Yeah.
So if Kenyon isn't great or isn't good, Juice is then having to help out. So there's just other things that play a part in it. But I think with this offense in general, before we even get to the defense, the way this offense is currently constructed, it's built to beat the Colts anyways, because of our wide receivers and our tight end. They are not a great secondary team. They are very good in the trenches, but they are not going to be able to shut down our passing game. And I think that bodes well for what the Texans are going to want to do this Sunday. Now, the Colts have shown in previous years, or at least last year, that they do tend to grow and change throughout the season. It'll probably be a different matchup this week compared to when we play them later in the season. But But I do think that the offense bodes well against the Colts defense and the Colts secondary specifically.
Yeah, I hate to admit it, but the Colts are very well coached.
They are very well coached.
And I mean, remember before Anthony Richardson got hurt last year?
Oh, he got hurt against us.
He did get hurt against us.
And before us, he looked like a monster.
And against us, him and Taylor were just having their way with us.
100%.
And that was not fun.
No.
And
that was only one quarter.
That was not a fun quarter.
No.
Because you could kind of see where it was going.
100%.
I mean, Taylor just like levels up and goes like Super Saiyan whenever he sees Texans on the field.
Yeah.
And Anthony Richardson, his first game, I mean, he looked all right. And then against us, all of a sudden it was like, oh dear God,
things were working.
He's going to be a monster.
Yeah.
And then he got hurt.
Yeah. And then Gardner Minshew. When I mean, you've never been a Minshew fan, but I think Minshew, for what he was for the Colts last year, was fine.
Yeah.
And considering that Steichen was able to do that with Minshew says a lot. Now add AR back. And it's like, what can...
I mean, we were a pass thrown behind a running back away from the Colts beating us.
Right.
In that winner-take-all game. I mean...
That was AR?
That's AR. They don't have to throw that pass.
Right.
I don't even know if they're in a situation where that pass is needed.
Correct.
Which is terrifying based on... Granted, we gelled and we got a lot better.
For sure.
But... if you're going to say, oh, well, we improved throughout the season, then we're going to say that they had to improve throughout the season.
100%.
So, yeah, it could have been, not saying that it necessarily would have turned out different. I'm just saying that it could have been very, very scary.
It could have been, right? I think AR it's last year's run defense was not what we had hoped. This year, we hope obviously we're that much better. But when we played the Colts specifically, we did not have a run defense. It didn't show up. Jonathan Taylor destroyed us. And that was with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Now it makes me wonder, what does that look like when Anthony Richardson's under center and you add that dynamic to a Jonathan Taylor running back, run game? Like, those two in tandem are a scary tandem.
Yeah, I mean, we have for good or for ill, we have a very modern defense.
Yeah.
We are set up to attack modern offenses, other zone scheme offenses that rely on short passes, things like that. That's how our defense is designed to shut those down.
Yep.
However, the Colts can do all that, plus they can just run it up the gut. And we look weakest against that sort of attack.
Yeah.
Like the interior runs, like if a team can do that between Richardson and Taylor, especially when you don't know if it's going to be Richardson or Taylor, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
The weakness the Colts have is they have nobody behind Taylor. Moss last year was great for them as their essentially he was RB1B.
Yep.
And they don't have that. And Taylor does tend to get hurt.
Yep.
And I mean, Anthony Richardson, like the knock on him is, will he be able to stay healthy? Even coming out of Florida, that was the knock. Will he be able to stay healthy? And he didn't start off on the right foot with that last year.
He didn't. He fed into the narrative.
So when you're the Colts, if healthy, terrifying.
Yeah.
But their Achilles heel will be health.
Can't you say that about every team almost? I mean, at the end of the day, it's always the healthiest team tends to be the most successful team at the end of the season.
Right.
I agree with you. I think can AR be I don't ever expect him to be a 16 or 17 game quarterback, but I could see him being a 14, 15 probably. And I think that's enough when you have what he's capable of being. The Colts offense is, it's going to be built around him and Taylor and obviously Michael Pittman. But Pittman doesn't worry me. He doesn't concern me with Stingley. So, there's other wide receivers that we'll have to see what they're capable of doing. I haven't followed Colts training camp, so I can't say. But I do think that we match up really well on defense with the Colts outside of the run game. The run game is a question mark right now. Can we shut the run game down? I don't know. Excuse me.
No, I mean, if we were playing rock, paper, scissors, they unfortunately do have the draw on that extra, what is it, rock beat scissors every time.
Sure.
And with Richardson and Taylor, when they're on the field, they have the rock beat scissors every time.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think if the Texans can just be, I would say, average against the run, then this defense is going to take another step.
Right.
If they are not, and they have the same woes and issues that they had last year with the against the run, it's going to be a long season, and we're going to see a lot of CJ Stroud bailing us out. Hopefully, that's not the case. 6 weeks suspension for Autry. Hopefully, when he comes back, he can add to it. Maybe they fix it. Maybe schematically they find a way to do it with the players that they have in house. But that's going to always be the question for this defense. I do think that we're going to be able to get after the quarterback on a consistent basis, which is ideal. Obviously, with the addition of Hunter and having Will Anderson here for his second year, he bulked up a little bit as well. It'll be interesting to see what the pass rush looks like. But I don't have a lot of concern with the pass rush. It's really just around the run game.
Well, holding the edge and the pass rush.
No Grenard either, which is interesting.
I'm sorry?
No Grenard. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Danielle Hunter, he's amazing.
No, 100%. It's just interesting.
Absolutely amazing.
It's interesting to
so you get to pair him with, I mean, Anderson will probably not play this weekend, but when Anderson's back on the field, like our two bookends, like this will be everything that we've ever dreamed of having.
I agree.
And our secondary, again, this goes back to health, but if we get like average health out of our secondary, like the ceiling on them does not exist.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned with the secondary as a lot of people. I am concerned with the safety position.
Yeah.
But quarterbacks, I'm not concerned like everybody else.
Safety and interior line.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we brought Eric Murray back, like that kind of gives me.
Well, and then we don't know how Petrie's going to play or what he's going to play.
He's playing that
kind of everywhere.
He's playing that like star nickel position,
I think he'll be fine.
That's what we're able to do and keep him out there consistently. That will be great.
It'll change everything.
That is.
And if Jimmy Ward can be healthy, we didn't see that last year. So this year, maybe he can be some sort of a pivotal role in that safety position. But based on last year, we don't expect him to play much at all.
No, but I mean, our defense is going to be at its strongest when we have the lead. Like they're
100%.
They are designed
to
maintain a lead for when the other team has to play behind.
Yep.
If the other team is dictating, if the other team is ahead, we will need our secondary or somebody to come up with big plays because we just don't have the interior bulk really to stop a team that wants to try and grind you out.
It was the one position that everybody felt like they didn't address that they should have addressed.
And it's still been kind of very head scratching because it seemed like they had a plan there and then they didn't.
Well, what was it? What was his name? From the Niners, Armstead.
Oh yeah.
That was supposed to happen, didn't happen. So whatever.
And we still honored the trade.
The Jags ended up getting Armstead.
Yeah, that to me, I mean, that's a little bit crazy. Like there was a trade in place. Armstead backs out, but we still sent the player to the Niners.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened.
I mean, I guess goodwill.
Maybe something will happen.
It probably still made sense from our side, but
maybe there's a
it was still kind of it was still kind of weird.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. I think the Colts Texans rivalry is going to start really being kicked into gear this year. I think this will be the start of what's going to be a long-lasting rivalry, very much to match the Peyton Manning Colts versus, I don't want to say Matt Schaub Texans, I'd say Andre Johnson Texans, but I think that's the path we're on. So with that being said, your favorite part of how we end shows and do shows. Prediction time.
You're gonna try and get me to make a prediction.
You haven't forever, actually said this is what I believe will happen. You always kind of pussyfoot around it and say I think this kind of maybe will. So maybe this time we get a full prediction from you on what the results will be.
You see, I hate predictions because
we are a football podcast. You know that, right?
I know.
Okay, all right. I want to make sure you didn't know that.
But I mean, because you're just making shit up.
Are you? Yeah. I think you're basing it off of facts and opinions. So yeah,
you're trying to sit there.
But don't you do that if you say a movie's going to be good or not be good?
Yeah, but you don't sit there and you try and predict how many people Like,
Yeah, the movie one got you. You were like, damn it.
well, I was gonna say in a movie you are not sitting there trying to predict how many people die in a movie, but sometimes you are.
But you
Like what
go
main
to a
character
movie
is like
thinking
is so and so gonna make it out? So no, I get you.
you
Like
don't
that,
go to a movie like, oh, this is gonna be bad.
right? And
But you've
that's
gone and said it's good, and then it's not been good.
but
Right?
that's when you're accusing me of pussyfooting because that's how I always do my predictions.
You're
Like,
safe. You're
not
just
safe.
safe.
I try and give you my vibes. Like I hate saying, "Oh, the number score." Like the number score, like that's just
So
the
okay,
most
so we can do
random.
predictions without numbers, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I've always been okay with
So
that.
you
It
can go
was
with
just saying,
wins. Win or loss, you can do.
mm-hmm,
But you can't say in what fashion.
right.
Okay. So what is the win or loss for this weekend for the Colts versus Texans?
I believe the Texans will win, and the threshold is if they get over 30 points, they're going to win. And I believe that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
If they don't score 30 points, we're not going to win.
Okay.
But I think that is less likely to happen.
I think the Texans win as well, but I think that it is a tighter game in the fourth quarter than we would like. I think the offense clicks in the first half, has a 10-point lead going into the half. I think the Colts start to figure things out a little bit and start to apply some pressure to the Texans. I think the Texans are able to hold off and walk away with a W. But ultimately, I think that's what ends up happening on Sunday.
Yeah. My reasoning behind it is I think CJ Stroud comes out there with more polish than Richardson.
Yep.
Richardson
Fair.
essentially just sitting the entire season out last year.
Yep.
We'll still have to just kind of get used to everything again.
Yep.
And if we're able to jump ahead, which we should be able to do with all of our receivers healthy, then yeah, our team is made to play with a lead.
I agree.
And if that happens, we're going to win.
Okay. All right. We didn't talk about like the long like season expectations yesterday. We did not talk about that today.
Oh, we'll just save it.
Okay. All right.
We'll just save it.
Okay.
We can do we can be a little bit more organized with our week next week, and we'll just have a little bit more time.
It's also the second time we recorded this week.
Yeah, I know.
For the first episode to be put out, we didn't do that. So next week should be a little bit better. Now that I think we figured it out. So
yeah, we're coming back. We took a break. Now we got to find our stride again too. We got a rust to kick off.
Yeah. No, for sure. Okay. Cool. Sweet. We both have Texans winning. We're back to recording weekly. Gave you life updates. Anything else we're missing or need to bring up before we end the pod?
I think we're good.
Thank you for those that do watch and listen. Thank you for the DMs along the last year and a half of asking if we're coming back or mentioning us on Twitter or whatever it may be. We appreciate that. We always appreciate what you guys have always done for us and supported us. And, even just putting out the teaser, you guys were there for that. So we appreciate that. We'll definitely be here more often, and moving forward, this will be a consistent thing. So I think with that being said, for John Wade, I'm Young Ari Gold signing off for Texans Unfiltered. We'll catch you guys next week.